Okay, before we start our rollers, I just want to show you how to roll a coil, kind of a fat coil. You don't want it to be too narrow. So really squeeze it so it looks good. And if you have any hard clay, like this clay is getting a little hard. Actually, this clay is getting a little hard. So I might dip it in water and then put it back in the bag with my other clay and wrap it up. And that's going to keep your clay moist. So don't be afraid to just dip it quickly in water and then put it back in the bag. All right, so I'm squeezing it and then I'm rolling it out. Squeezing it and then rolling it out, but I'm going to keep it fairly thick so that I have a nice sort of design. And I'm not going to let it be too wide. So I'm going to take my credit card and cut off the ends. You can also use your knife that you created. Let's see which one works better. I sharpened that one, so that one works pretty good. So I have that in there, so I'm going to want to get rid of that, but I'm going to cut it to be about the size of my pinky. And then get it back to round and really kind of clean it up. No sharp edges. Roll it so it's nice and even. And then in the next part, I'll show you how to start to decorate it. These are leather hard, so the video that I provided for you, she did it by pressing into there. So these are leather hard because you don't want your roller to get out of round. So I tend to like to work on them when they're leather hard, but mine's already getting out of round. So you can spend time drawing, or you can just make some pattern in there. And you're going to be using these, so you want to make sure that you like them. So I'll continue working on this. Okay, so this one I think is going to work well. You're going to have to put your initials or whatever, however you want to mark it on the sides here, and then with your hour and your A, B, or D on there. So initials on one side, A, B, D on the other side. And this looks like it would roll great into the clay. So I'm going to let that one be done. But this one is too rough, so I don't like that. One trick that I sometimes do is take a little piece of clay, and you can kind of see it. So I did little waves, and I like it. But you can take clay and try to get some of those crusties out, but I'm going to have to go back through a couple times to really clean this up and make those nice. And you can let it dry a little bit and then fleck them off, but you can't have those sharp edges on there. Here, let's try this. You don't want to press too hard, but you maybe can see a little bit what it's going to look like. So next time I might do X's, or I might just do circles for polka dots. If you have a little drill bit, you can drill in there, little polka dots in there. Just keep it close together so it's texture. So this one still needs work. So you need 2 of these. Okay, for cleanup, you can take this little piece of clay and you can go and get all your little bits up. Now this, you can use this clay for this all the time, or you can ball this up and get a little water on it and put it back into the bag with your other clay. And then this stuff I'll scrape off into the garbage, and then I'll go and get my sponge wet and wash this so it doesn't get too dusty. Now if I want these to get leather hard, I might just put them under here like this. If I'm all done with my roller and have it all good to go, I can leave it out to dry. Okay, this is the instructional video for making your stamps. I have some stamps here that I've made. I don't want to make this loud for you, but I just want to show you some of my stamps. So this was just made by pinching the clay and then taking tools and pushing in, and then taking other tools and pushing down like this, and then taking like the popsicle stick and pushing in like this. And it looks like this when I stamp it. And then another one, I've done all sorts of stamps. Like these are feathers. And this one, actually, your credit card would be good for going like this, and then I took this part and did a long line. So unlike your initials, I think these can be done when they're not leather hard. So when they're the wet clay, because you can press in there a little bit more. And then, you know, certainly make more stamps than you need. You know, how do you know what stamp you want? Well, you don't really until you make it and dry it out and stamp it. You know, that looks kind of like a Christmas tree, and that wasn't my intention. So I didn't love that one. I don't really use that one. These were some birds that I did. So they're really fun, and you can get better at them the more you do them, or you can keep them really simple. So let's just take a hunk of clay and start pinching it. And then what I'm going to do is take the end and kind of push down. And then I'm going to start shaping the end. So I'm going to work on this just a little while. Okay, I have my stamp here, and I've shaped this kind of into a leaf, and you'll notice that I kept pushing down to make it flat, and this side's a triangle. You know, you don't have to do both sides, but oftentimes I'm thinking, why not? Why not do both sides? That other side is there. You know, if you don't do both sides, you can just kind of pinch it. This is about as thick as we want it. We don't want the clay to ever be thicker than your thumb, or when I fire it, they can blow up. So now the question is, how do I get those leaf patterns in there? When the clay is wet and you draw into it, make sure that your tool's at an angle, like that. So if I were to do a feather, I would take this and start pushing out like this with the credit card. But for a leaf, I want those to come out, so I'm actually think I'm going to use my toothpick. Yeah, that's not super great. It's because they're going to shrink. It's not really deep enough. So I think I'm going to have to find something else. Maybe I'll go back to this. So your lines need to be deeper than what you think they should be. So think of the shape, certainly, and then think of what you're pressing in and how wide it is. And then I can go back through, and that looks like a pretty awesome leaf. So they don't actually have to be flat. They could be more rounded. And so now I'm going to take this and push into here, all sorts of stamps. Also, I have a Pinterest page, S. Yelmberg, that's called Textures in Clay, and I'll share that with you. Has a lot of good ideas on it. So now that stamp will have this part will go into it, and then this part will stick out. So you have to think about the reverse. So you can keep it simple or keep it more complex. You can put layers in there. So these parts will stick out and this part will go in. All right, I'll set that aside. This is one that I made and like it leather hard. So leather hard is tough. You can leave it out, but sometimes what I do is I make my stamps and then I just lay them like that. And then the next day I come and I see if they're leather hard. So that's when I don't cover them super great, but you have to have a good spot to keep your stuff. All right, you can take your, I forgot to tell you this with your initial, but that's a great carving tool. So now if I want to, I can carve into there and have a little bit more control than the pressing. You know, I'll probably go back in and maybe make those a little deeper. Maybe I would make it kind of be a jagged leaf by making those edges a little more jagged. So leaves come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. And so now maybe I can take my toothpick and kind of go in there like that. Okay, so the crumbs. the crumbs come into play. If you have a brush, you can brush away the crumbs like in the video we watched yesterday. You can scrape it, but then they're gonna go back in. So then you have to go back through. Oh, and I forgot a really great tool. I don't have mine right here, is your pencil. So your pencil makes a really great line for carving. Let's see what else we can do. So here's the pencil. Yeah, that's good. And then I can go through and make those edges. So if it's leather hard, you're gonna have a little bit easier time carving and a little more control than the pressing, but they both look great. And then remember that simple stamps work too, like just something like that or just something like this works really well and can be really interesting in repetition when you're